Hello everybody, welcome back to the JerBee Apiary, and I just wanted to take some time to talk about winterizing the bees, as far as I know, with a Layens Horizontal hive, and then talk about some other things to consider in winter that I've been researching and reading about in my early experiences with beekeeping. The weather has turned cold finally in upstate New York, and there's a snowstorm going on as I'm finishing up this video, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about what I did in the days preceding this storm. One of the first things I want to say is make sure you check on your fences regularly, because just about anything can break your electric fence apart. And you should regularly check on the battery as well, or your fence energizer if you have it on solar, either way, just to make sure everything's operating correctly and your fence is still intact, because you just never know who might be lurking just outside that door. Yes, we have a number of these up here, and if you've watched any other videos, you've seen what happens when they tear apart your hive. But in any case, I want to talk about winterizing the hives themselves. You may have noticed I put some hay bales in front of the hives as a windbreak, but also there's some other materials such as wool and straw you can put inside of the hive in order to help with insulation of the hive. Now, these hives have wool inside of their walls, but I wanted to put some wool, as in this fire blanket, underneath the lid inside of the hive. Now, this is supposed to also help with insulating the hive and also moisture control. So I cut it roughly to shape without taking the lid off so as to not overexpose any kind of cold temperatures to the hive itself. And then I simply laid that across the hive frames and across the top. Now, they have been propylizing some things and sealing up some air gaps already, which I thought was kind of neat to see that resin that they had done there. But I loosely tucked the rest of the blanket over the edge there and just closed it up. Yeah, I put those straw bales in front of the entrances so that any wind blowing in gets diverted. As a bit of an experiment, I decided to use a straw blanket, as it's called, in the other hive, and this would be in Hive 1, which was one that was attacked by the bear, in order to try and insulate that one. This has a mesh that is inside of the straw itself, and you can kind of unroll it like a blanket and then cut it as much as you need. This is made for landscaping projects in order to help keep your seed, if you're seeding grass, in place. But I decided to repurpose it for this, and I did the same thing. I laid it over the hive ahead of time so I can get a rough measurement on how I wanted to cut it. And I did this when the lid was still on so as to not overexpose cold air once again. This was luckily not too bad of a day. It was about 50 degrees. The temperature dropped precipitously after that. Hive 1 looks okay. I'm not going to open it up and take a look any further than that. I just know the bees are in there and they still come out whenever it's warmer. I folded the blanket itself over on top of itself in order to double up that straw. And again, this will also help with moisture control, with all that extra surface there when moisture gathers on it. With the way the heat circulates in a hive, it'll help it to evaporate a little bit better where the vent holes are on the lid itself. And I put the lid back on, put the rock on it, and considered that done. I've even heard of some people doing both in very cold environments, where you put the wool blanket there and put the straw on top. But this is maybe going to be a mild winter, and I decided to do one or the other. Bees that come out when it's 50 degrees or less outside really can't fly, or at least not very long after they leave the hive, so they tend to get on top of the box and can't make their way in, and they do die. Now, I noticed this did get the interest of some of the bees in the hive to come to the outside, but this is after I'd opened these, openings a little bit, because I originally had them where it was just these slits on two of the entrances, and I noticed there were a bunch of dead bees that the worker bees were trying to kick out of the hive whenever they downsized, but they were unable to get them through it. And so when I opened up the entranceway, there were a bunch of bees that were stacked up that needed to come out. And I feel that was the right decision. I minimized it because I didn't want mice getting in, but I think it's more important that they were able to clean out the hive when I noticed that. And so I did open those up a little bit, which I feel was the right decision overall. Even with mice or wind or anything else, they need to be able to clean out the hive. Hive 2 here had a number of bees, as I'd said, stacked inside that need to be kicked out, that are dead. Those ones that are on the outside are actually alive. And you can see a bunch of dead bees that were already outside the hive that either didn't make it in or were kicked out or drug out already by worker bees as they collapse the hive size down, which is a natural part of the overall process. So this is just a few days after doing a little bit of extra bee winterization. It's about 25 degrees Fahrenheit in upstate New York. Very snowy. And I think we're doing okay. I don't see a bunch of dead bees stacked up anymore in front of the entrance. Hopefully it's not too much air, but I've done what I can do with the knowledge that I have. And we're in for about 18 inches of snow potentially over the course of the next couple of days. So this should be interesting. One thing you want to keep in mind if you have an electric fence like this one, especially if you have black bears around you, you want to make sure you maintain that in the winter, especially when there's some certain days where it may warm up. The black bears don't fully hibernate, and so they may come out and forage and look for something to eat, and there's a tasty treat hiding out in there. So make sure you keep your fences going. And this guy's been around here lately anyways. It's been an interesting year with the bees. We're coming to a close here, coming up on January 1st here, not too far from now. We'll see if the bees will make it through the winter. I hope that they do, obviously. If they don't, I think I'll still give it a go next year and get a new pack of bees installed in whichever hive or hives don't make it. But I'm feeling pretty confident. I've done a number of different things in order to try to get them through it. And any comments, questions, concerns, or anything like that, go ahead and put them down in there. I'll try to answer them with the amount of knowledge that I have. Thanks for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe. Not today, buddy. Not today. Go to bed. It's getting cold outside. Time to sleep.